Hello everyone. In today's video, I'm going to introduce how you can compile a CUDA C++ project with a dynamically linked library and get code from the JNI. So firstly, we need some code to work with, which is either a dynamic or static library we can generate or compile from the source code. Here is an example I was working with, which is called jsoncpp. This is a library in C++ to help us to easily work with a JSON format. We can easily parse a string into the JSON object, or vice versa to parse a JSON object to a string. So I also hope to extend this feasibility into CUDA C++. I found some resources online, and here is one article which is written by Matt to introduce how we can access JSON data with C++ using jsoncpp, and this is a library we're going to work with. And here's some code. We're going to use a CMake to compile the source code into a static library which has an extension of .a. Here is a file we're going to generate. I've already generated that from the file repository. You can see this is a static library I just generated. Follow this instruction. Since I was working with a CUDA C++ in Visual Studio, and this property is a little bit different from the C++ project, I realized that I have some trouble to work with a linker, either the CUDA C++ linker or C++ linker. I tried to link with a static library, but I failed. So I think I need to find another way to work this around. I come back to the documentation of this JSONcpp, and I realized that the first recommendation is to work with a management system called the vcpkg. This one is a C++ library management system. We can use this to either work with Windows, Mac OS, or Linux to help us to manage the C++ or C libraries. So this is very convenient. And also, we're able to quickly install any libraries we need and have a centralized repository to manage all the things. I followed the instruction to install this JSONcpp via the vcpkg. After that, I get a repository of the vcpkg, and you can see under the packages I have many packages available, and one of them is called JSONcpp, which is I need from the project. So here I have the DLL file, and I also have the debug folder. I have the lib file. So this is a file I will need for this project. And if we take a look at the built-in form, and we will see that this is a dynamic link library. So that's why I say either we can work with a static, but that does not work for me. So I choose to work with dynamic. So the good thing is about vcpkg is that we can integrate automatically with a Visual Studio. So every project in the Visual Studio is able to detect all the libraries from vcpkg automatically. So that's a good thing. So I don't need to install anything, or I don't need to specify any linkers manually. I can directly work with that JSONcpp project. But if I want to work with a JNI, I need to compile the whole CUDA project into a single DL file. Then I can call that from the JNI. So the problem is that if I'm outside the Visual Studio, I cannot have this vcpkg available anymore. So what I need to do is actually I need to copy from the vcpkg. Basically, I will need to copy the DLL and lib file from this vcpkg folder, copy them into the repository. I will compile the whole project into a single DLL. So you can see I have the lib file as well as the DLL. Another things we need is a JSON folder which contains all the header file. These folders come from the source code. If we take a look at the source code of this JSONcpp, we will able to find a folder called include, and in the include folder, here is a folder we need for all the header files. So just copy this folder into your repository, and then we are ready to compile. Under the command line, you will see that I compile all the CUDA code with mvcc. And the most important thing is to have a -l to include a library which is called JSONcpp, and this is for this file which is jsoncpp.lib. and this one will be included in the compilation. So after the compilation, I will get a single DLL file that can be called from the JNI. So this is a DLL just generated from the execution of that code on the command line. And so after that, I will be able to call the DL from the JNI from the Java code. So as you can see over here, I have some Java code to work with in the Eclipse. So I have a dummy class which is going to help us to call this DLL, which is called a simple neural network, and we have a string as an input. And here we are going to call the DL we just generated, but we have one more step to take because we also have to load the DLL file of this library because this is a dynamically linked library. And if I do not include this one, I will get some error, which is maybe I'm missing some dependency and that cannot find any clue to trace off. So I think this will be very tricky sometimes. So just keep in mind if you want to call the DLL with some dynamically linked library, and you also need to load that dynamically library DL file when you call that from the JNI. So after that, you can freely to call the DLL file from the Java. So I think this is how we can call the CUDA project. Firstly, we can compile the whole CUDA C++ project with a dynamically linked library and also get call from the JNI. So these are the 3 steps which are very important to keep in mind. Hope this will be helpful, and if you like this video, please like or subscribe. Thank you so much for your time and see you next time.